Hey folks, David Stewart here. I'm leaving California, and here is why. So I don't have to repeat myself too much when people ask. So yeah, I'm leaving California. If you're wondering where I'm going to the Houston area initially, and then my wife and I will hopefully acquire a home somewhere around there or somewhere else. We don't know yet. So that's the plan. Why am I leaving? Well, it's not the little things. It's one really big thing. The little things I think of as lots of the reasons that people give for why I should move out of California, I guess during normal circumstances, or maybe people who left before, people who maybe never lived here but know some of the things about California. You know, it's expensive to live here, right? Real estate is very expensive, housing is expensive, gas is expensive, taxes are high, there's a state income tax. All of these things that make it difficult to live here. It's difficult to own firearms and be on the correct side of the law and all of that sort of stuff. All of that kind of stuff, to me, it's like very tolerable compared to just the one big thing, which is that my wife and I are not allowed to work in the state of California in our chosen professions. That is, I'm a teacher by trade. Now, I haven't had a day job in a couple years because I've been staying home with my kids. But my wife also works in education as a speech pathologist. Now, there are jobs outside of education as well, but it turns out that basically the whole profession within this state at least, was going with vaccine mandates. So in order for us to work in the state of California, we have to buy a corporate vaccine in triplicate for a disease that we already had. And I mention that at the end because there's no reason for us to get a vaccine. There's no benefit to it unless you believe in magic, unless you throw out hundreds of years of how diseases have worked, right? It'd be like getting a flu shot right after you had the flu for that year. Doesn't really make any sense. I've never had a job in, how old am I? In more than 25 years of working. I've never had a job that has ever asked me for some vaccine status that I had. Not one. I've never had a job that demanded that I show proof that I've ever had a vaccine. The closest thing was as a public educator, and actually when I taught at a community college, believe it or not, I had to get a tuberculosis skin test to see if I had been exposed to tuberculosis, a tuberculosis screening. Now that's a little bit different than having an experimental serum injected into my body, right? A little bit different. But that's the biggest extent of any kind of medical thing that I had to submit to in order to work in my chosen profession. Now, I had to do things like live scan, like be fingerprinted and all these other sorts of things, but not something which invaded the sanctity of my body. So the options are, if we want to stay in California, and my wife's family is here in California, then we have to submit, like we have to get vaccinated. And it's not just the vaccines that worry me, right? It doesn't matter if you think they're effective or not. I should have a right to be able to decide what goes in and out of my body. And I should be able to decide what goes in and out of the body of my children, particularly for a disease which they've already had, which carries no risk for children, at least healthy children, virtually no risk. And I make all of these practical points, like there's no reason for us to get it, just as a little extra piece. But even without those, I should have the right to be able to operate in the economy, to buy and sell without having to have things injected into me forcibly against my will, right? So I don't want to submit to that. That means since we can't work in the state of California, we have to leave the state of California. So that's the big reason. All the other little inconveniences, the difficulty of buying and selling cars, firearms, expensive to live here, expensive gas, annoying politics, expensive food products because you have people voting about farm practices they have no idea about, all that kind of stuff, all those inconveniences, those are little things. But once you have the big thing, all of those little things start to really blow up out of proportion, where you realize, like, I'm paying more money for bacon, I'm paying more money for eggs, like my gas. I drove to Texas a couple weeks ago. This is one of the reasons that I haven't had a lot of content recently, is I've been doing this move, but, drove to Texas and back. I could tell, like, as soon as I crossed over to the Arizona border, like, gas went from $6 or $7 a gallon down to like 4.50, on the border, right? And then by the time I got to Texas, it was like $3. And people are like, man, I had to pay $3.50 for gas. I'm like, I paid $7, you know, in like Barstow. That's not even an expensive town to get gas in, in California. But all those things start to add up. The fact that like I wouldn't be able to like give a relative a gun without breaking a bunch of laws or something like that. All that kind of stuff adds up once you make the decision that you're going to leave. You're like, man, it's like I don't have to pay state income tax. That's an extra like 10% of my income I just get to keep, which basically means you can make 10% less in another state and come out ahead. Lower cost of living. Basically, your money goes way further everywhere else. It's much more convenient to live other places. They're not bad traffic. There's not terrible air pollution like there is in California. California, especially in Central Valley where I live, has some of the worst air pollution in the world. There are cities in third world countries. Mexico City's worse. I think, Rio de Janeiro might be worse, some of the cities in China. But as far as like first world cities, like the Central Valley cities in LA, these are the most polluted cities ever. They're terrible. Half the people I know have asthma from living here. It's like they have actual like chronic diseases from how bad the air is. Constant allergies. When I lived in Las Vegas, I didn't have to take allergy medication of any kind. I was just like my airways were like completely healthy because I lived where there weren't things blooming all the time. All those things start to become like, wow, that's a huge relief of tension as soon as you leave it. But it's the big thing, which is that basically we can't operate in the economy. And the other thing is that when it comes to vaccine mandates, one of the things you have to think about is what's the next thing down the line? Like, what's the next thing they're going to make you do? Because it never stops there. The ball only stops rolling down the hill where you stop it and start pushing back. And the reality is the conservative, California used to be a very conservative state. It banned gay marriage 20 years ago. Proactively banned it. It was already illegal in California. Technically, there's no law in the books that says it's legal. But it's one of these things that's been just kind of run through the courts, which won't defend the constitutional amendment that was duly put in by the people. But anyway, I don't need to get into like the ins and outs of the bizarre court case of how gay marriage became legalized here. By the way, that's one of the reasons I don't do weddings. Here's another little thing, right? I stopped playing weddings. I used to play a lot of weddings about 15 years ago, right? I played weddings a lot. I had to stop playing weddings because people were getting sued for saying no to gay weddings. And there were gay couples hunting around for people to sue to make a point. This is part of like the social lawfare, like warfare through the law that, that the left will engage in and the right doesn't really want to engage in. But yeah, so I had to stop doing weddings because I could be sued for a large amount of money if I said, no, it's against my beliefs to play at a gay wedding. So I couldn't offer my artistic services, bake the damn cake kind of thing. So I had to stop doing that. So that's like a loss of income. That's a whole part of my performance income. Now I don't perform anymore. I rarely gig, but back then I was gigging all the time. And so that is a big loss of potential income because I can make a lot of money playing weddings. So all of those things start to add up and you're like, oh yeah, there was all these things that I had to stop doing or had to do differently in order to avoid the problems of California law. There's so many laws on the books, it actually becomes like an overwhelming burden. You're always violating laws, you feel like you're never really able to be free and clear on the good side of the law. And eventually that legal burden becomes so profound that people can't be certain if they'll ever be prosecuted or not. Police can't prosecute all the crimes because everybody's committing crimes. You have to kind of pick and choose. And so you basically end up in a situation where the hammer could fall on you at any time on something that you don't even know about, really, So anyway, all those little things start to add up. What's the next thing? I don't know what the next thing will be, but it'll probably be pretty bad because you know that there's going to be another crisis after this. There'll be something else that comes along. There'll be another flu. They're continuing to lock down COVID stuff. It's like I took a trip to Southern California. We couldn't go to any of the museums because they were either closed due to fear of COVID 2022, or they required like a full vaccine card and triple vaccines for everyone, including kids like under 12 and stuff like that. Or you had to have like 3 recent negative COVID tests. It gets ridiculous here, guys. I'm not sitting here, I'm not walking around coughing on you. Can I go to a museum? If I was sick, I would stay home from the museum. You know, everybody has to wear masks. It becomes an overwhelming burden. Like I see people walk down the street. I remember seeing this teenage couple. I remember multiple times. See a teenage couple walking down the street. They're both wearing masks. They're holding hands, wearing masks. They pause at the corner at the light, pull down their masks, and they kiss. Take a sip of their Starbucks and put their masks back on as they're walking down the open street. I see old people huddled over, like wearing masks as they like walk next to each other down the street to the home where they live together in, and it's like someone slapping you in the face. People are so demoralized here. It's almost overwhelming. Like I live in this little island community where everybody is similar to me almost. Not everyone. There's lefties here too, but right. No one masks. No one takes any of this stuff seriously in this tiny little town. And outside of that, it's like hell, you know? Yeah, it's really bad anywhere that's outside of where I'm at. And the tide's rising. Eventually, the localities, school districts resisting mandates because they don't want to fire teachers. Eventually, the tide's going to rise. And what are you going to do next? Well, I would rather be able to leave when I have the capacity to leave, when I, am not leaving a bunch of money on the table by selling my property for like worthless values if property values collapse, things like that. So I'd rather leave on my own terms, but really I have to leave because if I wanted to go back to work in California, I couldn't. And it's uncertain whether my wife would be able to work next year. So anyway, that's why we're leaving. That's the reasons. Those are the big reasons why we're leaving California. So it's the big things, not really the little things, but as soon as the big things, as soon as you make that decision, all the little things start to just accumulate. Now, this is the second time I've lived in California. I lived here for a long time, and then I moved to Nevada, and I thought I would never come back to California. But, I ended up marrying my wife. And so, of course, got to move back for love. And, we moved to where we're at now because most of her family is here. And that's a big thing to walk away from, right? It's a big thing to walk away from. But what am I going to do? Like, what are we going to, we'd have to like sell our house and I'll go pick oranges or something to stay in California? No, at a certain point, the burden of resisting the tyranny and like finding other ways to make money becomes a little bit too great and annoying. Like, no, I shouldn't have to abandon my career that I've invested money and time into in order to have any capacity to make money and go work as an go work with undocumented immigrants. Undocumented, they don't have any restrictions. They don't have COVID restrictions on them. I have to go basically be an illegal immigrant in my own home because that's the only option. I'm not a legal person. I have no legal rights as a person. So that stuff's how it is. And then we've got the recent stuff with the Supreme Court. We have legislators responding that, hey, we're going to pay for anyone that wants to come in here and have an abortion. Well, if you have the option to leave and your tax money, that's being forcibly, extracted from you is going to pay for something that you consider evil, well, there's a certain moral obligation to leave at that point. If you can leave, right? I think there's mitigating circumstances as I try to do the moral calculus. But if I reasonably can leave without incurring massive suffering on my family or myself and avoid that remote cooperation with evil, then I probably ought to do it. And so that's another thing that's coming down the pipeline, is that the state is going to continue to do more and more evil things, and by paying taxes in this state, I am engaging in remote cooperation with evil. But the big one is that I simply I wouldn't be able to pay taxes here because I wouldn't be able to make any money. Was basically how it would go. And yeah, we could take a step down in our lifestyle and our material wealth. And I'm very blessed to be materially wealthy in a bunch of different ways. And if all of that got taken away, what God gives, He can also take away. But I have the option to not get rid of all of it in order to stay in this location. It's not, California as a place is not so precious to me. I'm not willing to walk away from it and preserve my wealth. And also, I have to think about the future of my children. What are my children going to do? If I chose to stay here, I'm massively limiting their future prospects. I'm massively limiting their ability to be free and to make choices for themselves and be wealthy and have careers and businesses that they care about. I'm putting a massive break on their trajectory as well. And I'm limiting their prospects where I could go somewhere else and not have those limitations at all. So yeah, that's where we're going back to Texas. My family is all in Texas. I was born in Texas. That is where I'm from. So I'm going back home. And I'm really looking forward to it. I'm excited about it in a bunch of ways. There's a lot of grief from leaving a place that I've been in for so many years of my life. And I have so many friends. I have so many memories here, both good and bad. But, the good ones are the ones that you tend to look back on more fondly. And so there's a lot of grief there. I like the town where I live in. I like the locality I live in. But it's an island in a rising tide. It's an island in a storm that is surrounding everything here. And, for the sake of my children, if I can choose something better, I will. It's not to say Texas is like some land of perfection, right? There is no nirvana. There's no nirvana in this world, right? Nirvana is not for this world. You can't find perfection. You can make, prudent trade-offs. What's the best trade-off place to be? I can't go to some, magical wonderland where everything is perfect. But I can go to a place that has significantly better trade-offs than where I'm currently at. And Texas is going to be that. I have family there, so it's not like, I have a different family. And I'll have a lot more freedom to pursue my interests, to live the lifestyle that I want to live. It's such a pain here to just I just want to go out and shoot some skeet. There's no skeet club. Everything's shut down. All the fun stuff to do with guns is just gone from this town. And I grew up with that stuff. And man, I would just love to get back into shooting skeet or shooting trap. But it's not just not a feasible option here unless you want to massively inconvenience yourself. Last time I shot trap, somebody had the launcher. So we went out to somebody's orchard that we had permission, and then there was a 2-level thing, and then we could shoot trap over the orchard, and then we had to go gather up all the broken clays and stuff. So, you know what I mean? Little blocks, little breaks, little parachutes that slow you down. There's so many of them, and you only really notice them when you take them off. But I'm only taking them off because of the big thing. So that's it. Leave me your thoughts down below. The big comment I always get is, I can't believe you're still there. Why were we still there? Why is the fiddler still on the roof? Because it's his home. We have lots of family here. We have lots of roots here. My wife is from here. I went to multiple levels of school here. I taught college here. I went to college here, and I taught here. I performed here. I had a performance career here. I did all of these things here. Right? We have a lot of roots. To completely abandon your roots sucks, man. You don't want to lose all your friends. But at a certain point, you have to. There's not a lot of options for what you're going to do. So yeah, you stay because life is not just the price at the pump. Life is in the people that are around you. And unless it's something really big, it's hard to just leave that. Now I'll be back. I'll visit from time to time, of course. But, I have to think about the people I have the biggest allegiance to, which is my children. The biggest responsibility for, and that's my children. So anyway, leave me your thoughts down below, and I'll see you guys next time. If there's not a ton of content over the next month and a half, maybe 2 months, I don't know. I'm very uncertain how my setup is going to be going forward. There's not a lot of content, or there's delay on the rest of the books that I want to put out this year, it's because, well, I'm homeless. I have to sell my home, move into a rental home, then buy another home. Like 2 moves. I got to do 2 moves basically. Ooh, not looking forward to it. But it's the best and easiest way for us to do it financially. So there we go. Have a great one. God bless you all, and thank you for watching. I really appreciate it.